We'll start in the next 2 minutes. We're waiting for people to come in.
For sure. Okay.
Sanjay, I think you can start.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Is my screen visible in full screen mode?
Yes, it's visible. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, Harish. Hi, everyone. My name is Senji Lakshmi. I'm a graduate student from Indian Institute of Science, Ecological Sciences Department. I'm working with Dr. Karthik Sunagar. I am a fourth-year PhD student. I am going to be doing this communication skills workshop, but I also want this session itself to be more communicative and more interactive. This is more about my experience of how I applied and communicated to faculty as a PhD student. This presentation was compiled by my senior Harish Sridhar from the department, but I will be presenting this with also some of my experience of communicating with the faculty. So this session, like I was saying, is going to be about what do faculty from their end expect to see in mails that they receive from students, either for internship or for asking for PhD positions. But more than skills, these are mostly conventions, like unsaid rules that is better if you follow it, and it increases the chances of you getting selected for the internship or the PhD position if you follow these conventions. So it's not really a skill, but it is more about the things that you have to keep in mind before you apply to a faculty. But why are these conventions important? Like I said, it increases the chances of you getting selected, mainly because faculty are extremely busy. They get a lot of query mails from so many different people, including people mailing them for internships and job positions. So obviously, if you want to stand out, you have to be more careful about what you're writing. And the second thing is, you write a mail and then they read it and it is really impressive. That is going to last longer. They're going to have a good opinion about you in general, and that starts with your first mail itself. So again, let's see point by point about some of these conventions of what is best to be added and what is best that you don't add. But the most important thing before you start writing to faculty from a department in general is you identify labs or specific faculty you would like to work with. You could even contact some of their students via LinkedIn or talk to them during conferences and actually identify if you're comfortable with what they are doing and if the work really interests you, instead of just randomly mailing people by just taking their email from a website. So where can you find these information if you're not able to personally get in touch with them? There are a lot of ecology related groups that have these websites and maintain these lists of information about faculty, about research groups that are working in this field, what they do, who are the people working, so on and so forth. So these are the two links where you could actually go and get this information, but obviously you can just search online, go to the CES website, for example, or any institute's website, for example, and get the information about the research the faculty is actually conducting. So let's go to the actual conventions one by one. We will look at them and see why it is important to have some of these things in the mail that you're writing. You can obviously get some of these ideas by just looking at templates that are available online, but this is more from our personal experience of mailing faculties and being students in the ecological sciences department. So the subject line, it's like the cover page of a book, right? So even though we always say that don't judge a book by its cover, we always get impressed by what we see in the front. So a subject line is like the face of your book or whatever content that you have in your email. So having a proper subject line is very important to make sure your email does not get buried in the loads of email that the faculty are receiving. So here are some of the examples of how emails are received. So sometimes even I receive emails from students asking about internships, and these are some of the things that I have observed as well. A lot of people either leave the subject blank, they just put very generic things like inquiry, application, and even if they mention a specific field of interest, this is obviously what I'm doing, but what are you interested in this? Is it like you're asking me a doubt about my paper? Are you asking me a general query, or do you want a job? I don't really get much information from this, right? And this is for a graduate student, but imagine a faculty who has to screen lots and lots of mails. So obviously these kind of mails are not going to go through if you actually write this as a subject line. So same way, even if you're asking for an internship, don't just write it like internship or one-line things. Actually try explaining that if it is a long-term internship, short-term internship, in what project you're interested in. So just put a little bit more effort, but also keep it concise so that it's not like 2-line long and they can't really understand what you're trying to say. So it is about striking the right balance. So this example here is a good example of how you can write a subject line that is more captive and also informative. So that's about the subject line. And the second thing is you address the person in your email. So there is a rule that you could address people that you don't know by first name basis, using their surname if they have a surname, and use appropriate salutations, like if they are a professor, use professor, or a doctor if they are in a different rank. If you're addressing postdocs, use doctor. Otherwise, just try to use Mr. or Miss. Or if you don't know who you are addressing to, you could just keep a generic word. But obviously, this is a faculty that you're writing to work with them. So you would generally know the rank or their salutation by just looking at their website. So put a little bit more effort into doing these things, because these are some of the small things that will tell the faculty that you actually put an effort to write this mail. And also, when you write an email, the first thing is to start introducing yourself. You can't just randomly start talking about, I want to work in your lab. Obviously, introduce about yourself, tell about what you're doing. Also give a little bit background about where you come from, what you have done, so that they get an idea about who the person actually is. And then comes the purpose of your email and the section where you actually talk about your research interest. So it is better if your research interest aligns with the research interest of the faculty, clearly stated. But even if there are differences, try to see if you can relate it to what they are doing and explain why your interest could be a new field that they could also start looking at. But these are some of the things that you would want to do prior to sending an email. Read their papers, look at some of their the talks if they have given, if that is available online, or if you have seen them give a talk in a conference, try to mention that and say that, hey, this is the talk that I attended and I really like this part of your research and I want to further do this. And always also try to think about something that you would do there, a particular project, even if you can't go to the details of how the project would be, at least have an idea about how you would go about working in their lab. That really helps, and that really shows the faculty that you have put in the efforts to write this email to them. And also give practical details like when you will be coming, how long you would be staying, if you are a dissertation student or you just want to do internship. Are you looking for a paid position like a project assistant position? Do you have your own funding? Have you cleared any exams that will give you funding? All of these information becomes really helpful, especially if you're applying for a PhD position. Please clearly state that if you want the faculty to support your PhD, or do you have any grants that will support your stipend for the next couple of years. And if you're writing to a faculty who's not in India, who's abroad, how are you going to go about securing a position in a foreign university? So all of these small details about taking efforts to getting into that position would really make a lot of difference. And another important thing is to attach your CV. So we will talk about some of the rules of writing a CV and some of the important sections that you would want to put in your CV rather than just using a template available online. And if you are attaching a CV, please mention in the email that you have attached a CV. Again, this gives more consolidated information about your educational qualifications, so on and so forth, so that the faculty can have a screening criteria if they are looking for that. And all of these things like signing off and then introducing, salutation, all of this is a part of any email. So ideally, you should be doing this to any person that you are emailing. So do a proper signing off and then give a respectful thank you or best regards or whatever that looks professional. But the most important thing is to proofread. So now that you have written the whole email from the subject to the body of the email, proofread it, maybe ask your friend to go over it once, or if you have faculties in your own institutions who you are close with, you could even ask them to check it once and even discuss with them about the research idea that you're proposing to see all of that you're saying makes sense. Because grammatical mistakes is not going to be a complete disaster, but it is always nice to have your email grammatically verified. You could use apps that check grammar for you to just simply correct a few little things that would just make it look more neater. But again, even after doing all of this, even I have been in this place, you don't hear back from the faculty. And if this is a position that really matters to you, we always get into the confusion. Do I ask them again? Do I send a reminder? Will it be bad if I send a reminder? But what most people say is that they could miss the emails because of so many other things that they're going through. So it is okay to send a reminder maybe in a week. And you could also send the mails by looking at the time zone. So if you are mailing a faculty who is not in the Indian time zone, try to mail it in such a way that the mail reaches them in the morning, not at some random time in the day, because most faculties have this habit of checking mails either the first thing when they reach their office, they try looking at their emails. And if you send the mail in the morning, the more chances of you getting your mail on the top. And I have done this too. And now Gmail and Outlook, all of them have the option of scheduling your mail. So even if you don't really have the time to get up and send the mail in the morning, or if you're not able to do it because of your classes or something, you could always schedule your mails for a particular day and a particular time, and it will be sent around that time. And that really increases your chances of being read, increases chances of your mail being read. And also try to send it during working days, not during holiday seasons. For instance, if you're mailing someone in the US, you would know that Christmas holidays are really important for them, and then they don't really work around that time. So it's important you don't send a mail at your convenience, but also try to think about their convenience. Don't send it over the weekends, because by Monday they'll have a pile of emails that they want to look at. So it's better you time your emails also in a right way. And it is definitely okay to send 1 or 2 reminders, but if you send like 2 reminders and you still don't get a response, then it obviously means that the faculty is not interested. So it's unlikely that they miss 3 emails from you. So you can send up to 2 reminders and then stop bothering them after that. So what do the faculty don't like in seeing that they receive from students, and what leads to instant rejection of your emails? That is like things copy pasted from websites, like very obvious things like Wikipedia. You clearly can read it and see that it's copy pasted from somewhere else. So please don't try to do that, or even copy paste from their own lab websites or their papers. These things are definitely a no-no, because plagiarism is completely bad thing in science, in academia. And if you're going to plagiarize your introduction email, obviously you will lose the trust of the faculty you're mailing to. So please don't copy paste anything, even if you're paraphrasing things from a paper that you have read in your own words. It's okay if you don't get the science right. Obviously, all of us are not great scientists until we actually start practicing. So it's okay to get the science wrong, but it is definitely not okay to copy paste someone else's work. So please don't do that. And another thing a lot of students do, the mistake that a lot of them do, is writing a very generic email. So we'll also see an example of how not to write an email, where you will see how generic the email templates could get. So please don't write a general email where you just address them with the same thing, like dear sir, dear ma'am, or something, and then just write the same exact email to different people, particularly to different faculty from the same department. I mean, if they discuss about this, it's obviously going to be bad, and you're going to be, banned from the whole department. So please don't write generic emails. And also simple things like institution name, faculty name, these errors could obviously be avoided if you just pay a little more attention into what you're typing. And also don't ask them for information like where is your lab situated, what are you working on. So, I mean, I have also seen emails that, my faculty forwards to me to just screen if we could have an internship position created for them. But then I see that they ask stuff like, what are you guys working on? Like, obviously it is there in our website. If you got the email ID, you could have definitely got that information as well. So please don't ask for these things. And please don't write like 3-4 page long emails detailing about your background and the things that you have done. Those things could go concisely in your CV. Obviously that increases the chances that you have experience in the field. It really is good, but only on your CV. Your CV also should not be more than 2 pages long. You could put some of those details there, but definitely not in the mail that you're writing. So we will see how not to write an email. So this is not one particular email, but this is collated from generic emails that I have received, my faculty have received, and some emails that I have seen. You give the name and college, you introduce yourself, that's good, but you give a generic salutation like sir/madam. Like if you don't even know who you are writing to, then it clearly shows that you put 0 efforts into writing this mail. So please avoid doing such glaring mistakes. And then this person here talks about their experience in biotechnology. They are interested in biotechnology, they're doing biotechnology. There's so much of biotechnology all over this mail. Like, I get it, you do biotechnology, but what beyond that? So that is not at all conveyed in this mail. And they are also doing a 4-year course, but that is all is there. When exactly they are planning to come here, as in which dates? I mean, the last semester could be any semester of any year. So there is no mention of when they will be starting, when they'll be ending, what is the goal of them doing the internship or training in the lab. And the most important thing is they didn't even get the name of the institute right. Like, seriously. So it's that kind of mistakes, and I'm not being sarcastic here. We do get these kind of emails, and that directly goes into trash. So please pay attention to these things. And again, about the research conducted in your laboratory. So yes, of course, all of us do research in the lab, but what research, what exactly do you want to work on? None of this is conveyed in this. Even though the salutation and all of this is there, this mail is definitely not a complete email that would get you that position that you want in your dream laboratory. So now, how to write an email? So this is an email again that was put together from Professor Vishu's lab. So here you can see that this is again an example email to just to give you an idea. This is not like from one person or something. So this has a good subject line, a proper salutation to the faculty, gives relevant information like the name of the person, their college, what they're doing, when did they start their course, or when did they complete the course, what is their interest, what position they are applying for, what kind of research experience they have prior, their interest in different fields, and the particular thing that made them apply to this lab, the field that really interested them, and the research topic that really interested them. And they also mention about reading a paper from the lab, which is an additional advantage, showing that you really took the efforts to read about the lab. And they also discuss about a project that they are interested in working for a certain duration of 1 year, from this so-and-so date to so-and-so date, and how that would be helpful for them, or what would be their next step, like whether they are planning to stay here long term, or what is their idea of doing this work. And they're also attaching a CV and signing off. And this mail is also proofread without any glaring grammatic errors. So these are some of the things that would obviously give you a chance of at least the mail being read. So obviously there are a lot of other reasons why you may not get the internship position, because already some 7 people mailed before you and they got selected, or the faculty does not work on that project anymore, or they don't have the sufficient funding to support you. There could be several reasons why you may not get the position, but definitely don't make your email the reason why you're not getting the position, even though you are actually very interested and a good candidate. So to just again briefly recap, what should be conveyed in your email should be brief, precise, to the point, but with all the relevant information detail. No long emails, but just to the point. And also showing that you have actually read through their work and you have put in some efforts into writing that email. And be frank, if you don't know something, just say, I don't have much experience in this field, but I'm certainly interested from what I have read and I want to read this. So faculty don't really expect you to come with all the set of experience and the technical skills that is required for a project. You could always learn, you could always improvise once you join the lab, and you could always get trained. But what is important is that you actually understand what they are doing, or at least interested or have passion about what they are doing. So be frank about what you know and what you don't know, and never lie in your CV or in the mail. Please don't say things that you have actually not done to oversell yourself, unless you're actually planning to learn all of those things before you join. Don't put things that are not true. This will definitely land you in problems after you join. So don't be in that position where you lie on your introduction email or your CV. And if you want a dissertation position, I have also seen this with a lot of students who want to do dissertation, probably starting in December. They'll mail in November and ask, can I join? Sometimes they mail in December and say, oh, I want to start from next week. Shall I start in your lab? That's definitely not going to happen, because all of this requires planning in advance. The faculty also has to plan if they are going to accommodate a new student. So please start the conversation 6 months in advance, or sometimes if you're applying for a PhD position, even apply a year in advance, so that you have enough time to prepare for all the other administrative requirements that are associated with the job or with the internship or with the PhD position. But also keep in mind that by offering you a position, the faculty are not really doing you a favor. It's not that you have to be eternally thankful to them for giving this internship opportunity. Faculty and any researcher relationships are mutualism. So I hope everyone knows what mutualisms are. Both the faculty and the students benefit from this relationship. You are going to go work in their lab. You're going to do the job that they want someone to get it done. You're going to be, if you're interested enough, you're going to be publishing papers, you're going to be working on a paper. So all of this is obviously beneficial for the faculty as well. So you definitely have to keep that in mind, but also keep in mind that it is a both-way thing. If they are offering you a position, you obviously have to give back something in return in terms of the amount of work that has to be done within a given deadline or the project that needs to be finished. So please keep in mind about how much give and take this relationship demands. So I said that we will also go very quickly about the different conventions of writing a CV. So keep it short. You give the essential information like name, education, so on and so forth. You could also mention about your awards, research experience, and so on, but be very concise about all of this. And under each section, it is better to organize it in a chronological order where you say the recent information first, because that's what is more evident. Obviously, no one wants to know what you did in your 5th grade. It is more important what you did recently. And also try to modify your CV and introduction mail depending on the position that you are applying. You can't use the same CV for a dissertation or an internship and the same CV for applying for a project assistant position or a job or even a PhD position. Obviously, modify and keep updating your CV depending upon the position that you're applying for. And it is always better to put in information about 2 or 3 of your contact details, your referees. These could be people who you have worked with in the past. It could be a postdoc who mentored you. It could be a faculty whom you worked with. It could be one of your professors from the college who really knows your caliber, who knows how academically good you are or how good your research is. Many professors don't really ask for recommendation letters all the time, but it is at least nice to see some of these names there so that they get this idea that they could trust what you have put in that CV because someone else is ready to endorse it for you. So it's just good to put it there, but it is again not an absolute necessity if you really don't have anyone who could say these things about you. But all of this aside, obviously faculty do know that not everyone has the same background, not everyone comes with the same capacities, not everyone has the ability to get into an internship and do some research before they apply for a position. So it's okay if you don't have those qualifications, but be truthful. Tell them what exactly you have and what you don't. And like I was saying, you could obviously correct grammatical errors by proofreading it or using an app like Grammarly, but the faculties are not going to reject your email because you have issue with spoken English or written English. That is certainly okay, and it is definitely not a problem in many of the labs, especially in ecological sciences. I have personally seen that the faculty even encourage the students to communicate in other languages. If you know Hindi, other local languages, they are ready to support you as much as possible. So please don't think that I have to know English to get an internship position or a PhD position. And most importantly, not everyone comes from big colleges, right? From my personal experience, I am a student from a state university who did not have as much exposure as I have right now in ISC. Obviously, I wouldn't compare myself to some of the colleges in rural areas, but state university students still had limited exposure. And I have also written to multiple professors and got rejected by many of them. So please don't take rejections personally, it may not actually be you. It could be some of the reasons that they just can't accept you for a position. So it is okay also to write to multiple people. So people always have this opinion that you can't just go on mailing multiple people. But if you know what you're doing, as long as you're just not copy pasting things and just sending a generic email, it is okay to apply to multiple places, to multiple positions, be it PhD or internship. Obviously, you have to try, right? If you want, you have to try. So it's okay to apply to multiple people. I started in this ecological sciences field as a dissertation student. I did my 6 months dissertation project with Dr. Karthik Sunagar. And when I first came into the lab, I had no idea about ecology or evolution because I studied biotechnology and we don't have much courses that actually take us into the field of ecology or evolution. So it's okay to accept that you don't know things, and it is always okay to start afresh and learn a new field as long as you have the passion to learn. And I did not pursue cancer research or HIV research that many of my fellow students, my classmates in my BTech were doing. Many of them went for dissertation in labs that did some of these famous career options like cancer research and so on. But I always wanted to do something different. I wanted to work on ecology, even though I didn't have experience in ecology, and I pursued a personal interest without succumbing to peer pressure. And another thing that I'm glad that I did was to apply for funded summer fellowship positions, even though if it is just for 6 months or 2 months internships, it is always nice to apply and have your own funding because faculty don't really have the ability to support short internships because most grants don't support these roles. So it is always nice to have your own fellowships, and you could definitely take help of your college professors, your seniors. Some of us even in other colleges like ISC would definitely be interested in helping out students who are really interested in applying for some of these fellowship options. I also have a mail ID in the end, so you could get back to me in case you have any queries about how to go about applying some of these fellowships. Hari, I thank him a lot for the presentation that he had put together. I had just made some last minute tweaks to add in my personal information. But if you have any queries further about the things that I discussed in the beginning, you could definitely mail Hari and ask him further queries. And this is my mail ID. You can mail me and ask if you need any guidance about how to write to faculties, how to apply for funded fellowship positions and so on. Thank you all so much for patiently listening.
Hello. This is Amrita. Hope you're able to hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. Thanks for this detailed presentation. It was really good. I just have one query. Like, is it to write to the faculty or to apply for any of the positions? Considering a PhD position, is it compulsory that I should have cleared one of the any of the national exams and come with a grant and later apply, or can it still be done? I mean, can I still write to any of a professor whom I'm interested to work with?
Yeah, so for a PhD, it really depends on where you're applying to and the institutional norms. In India, mostly you have to have a national entrance clearance so that you can apply for a PhD position. And then there are interviews. I think in one of the previous sessions, they would have explained about how to apply for a PhD. So they would have spoken about the different exams and what is the interview process and so on. So that mostly depends on the institute for you to get enrolled as a PhD student in the institute. But you can always write to the professor and ask that if they are interested in taking a student, if you apply to CES, for example, if the faculty would be interested in having you as a PhD student, you can definitely do that. And to send that query mail, you obviously don't need any clearance or something, but to register as a PhD student, you definitely have to qualify to the eligibility criteria set by the institute, not essentially by the professor.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Harish, can I start now or are we taking questions?
We can wait for 2 minutes if somebody is going to have other questions. Otherwise, you can start. And we can have actually, Sheshadri, you can start.
And have the questions at the
Maybe
end.
you can take a pool of questions later.
Sure.
Senji, you'll be around, right?
Yeah, I'll be around. Yes.
Yeah. So then we can have the questions later. Yeah.
Okay.
Please this is for the participants. Please feel free to type in your questions as well. I will read it out to them as well. If you can't ask the question. Yeah. Sheshadri, you can start.
Yes, and you can see my slides, right?
Yes, I can see. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. I know it's a sleepy afternoon and we're talking about communication, and I'll try to do a good job of it. I'm a faculty at Day-3, Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and Environment. I'm Sheshadri, as you can see from my slides. Before joining Day-3, I used to be a postdoc at the Center for Ecological Sciences. My research is generally to do with broad aspects of ecology, from studying frogs to studying the forest canopy. And an important part of what I do is communicating science. And in today's lecture, I'll try and summarize some of the rules that we follow in communicating science. Let me get to the next slide. Yeah. This talk is essentially modified from, hang on 1 second, I'll get rid of, yeah. This talk is modified from a lecture that my PhD advisor, David Bickford, used to give. It's called the 10 Simple Rules of Science Communication, and I've taken the liberty to modify and change things around here. If you think about it, humans are kind of different in a way. A lot of animals communicate, a lot of plants also communicate, but humans have this powerful tool that we can learn and adapt and write things. And it could be a squiggle on a dead wood, or it could be a speech that you're giving at your Nobel Prize ceremony. It's a powerful tool that we can use, and we can use language to convince people to do something that is necessary, or we could nudge people into doing things differently. And language is a powerful tool in the process of science. And in fact, I would go out on a limb and say science communication is the most important process of scientific method. And I know from earlier today, you heard Maria talk about the scientific method, and I would go out to venture that it is the most important part, and I'll demonstrate how in the next few slides. David Bickford, my PhD advisor, used to compare having dinner with doing science. In that, while having dinner, we decide what we want to eat. Whereas in science, it is your research objectives. What is it that you want to find out? Once you decide what you want to eat, you go out and forage for food. You go out and buy, if you want to eat pasta, you go out and buy pasta, and you buy vegetables and cheese. Whereas in the process of doing science, you go out and gather data. And then you prepare your food, you follow a recipe. In the process of science, you analyze data. And the last part of what you do about having dinner is you eat. And in science, it is communicate. So if you didn't communicate your science, it's as good as you didn't do your science. And science communication becomes important in today's world because science denialism is a big thing, and a big part of why there is science denialism is, as scientists, many of us have failed to communicate science effectively. And as you can see from the quote here, the major problems in the world are the result of the difference between how nature works and the way people think. And that is where science communication becomes an important part of our lives. As scientists, when I was a grad student, our lab collectively used to ensure that we communicated our science, not just in research articles or journal articles, but also reach out in popular media. It could be different news organizations, or it could be, in this case, a spoof website called The Onion, which makes a parody of science also. And science communication essentially has two parts to it. One is communicating existing knowledge, which is what we call as teaching. And the other is creation of new knowledge and spreading of the new knowledge, which is what we call as science. And in both cases, there are two components to science communication. There are two players. One is a communicator who has a frame of reference. The communicator has to be accurate, brief, and clear. And the receiver has a frame of reference, and the communicator needs to adapt to who the receivers are. In our case here, Senji and I are communicating how to communicate about science, and you guys, the participants, are the receivers. You are here to learn about how to communicate science, and both of us need to adapt to how you need to perceive the information that we are gathering. I can't sit here and talk to you about a movie that I saw. That's clearly not your frame of reference, and I need to adapt to your frame of reference. There are multiple kinds of science communication also. One is, of course, you're all familiar with written. You write journal articles, you write proposals, grant proposals, you write a thesis or you write your dissertation, you make posters, you also write books or book chapters. You give speeches, you give interviews. Typically in a PhD program, once you apply, clear the entrance exams, there's an interview, and that's an oral communication that you're engaging in. There's also a visual component to it. You could make figures, you could make graphs, you can make animation. These are also formats in which you can communicate science. And of course, the last part, which is not very commonly seen, is performance. People usually a slide presentation, if this was a real world, you'd be seeing me moving around the class and I'm actually engaging in some sort of a performance. Right now, because it's online, I'm sitting and hopefully you're all sitting as well. And in this case, I'm orally communicating, I'm moving my hands, so I'm engaging with some visual movement also. And just to give you a brief comparison between these different formats, if you look at multiple components of any piece of science communication, there's ideas. In a conference talk, you tend to give out you give out a new idea every 2 to 3 minutes. Whereas in a journal article, there's no limit. You can have a new idea how many ever times you want. Repetition in a conference talk is good, but in a journal article, it's not really required. The length, of course, you have to keep within the time frame. If you're given a 15-minute slot, you stick to that. Or in a journal article, typically it's about 3,000 words. Your article should be limited to that. Humor, essential, and it's not essential, but it's desirable in a oral communication. Whereas in a journal article is largely inappropriate. The style should be conversational when you're giving a conference talk, and it should be simple. But in case of a journal article, you need to be formal and you need to be concise. And this is generally things to keep in mind when you communicate science. Now, how can we move from just communicating science to being effective communicators of science? Some of the things that we end up doing when we communicate science is, who are we communicating to? You could be talking to your colleagues, you could be talking to your peers, you could be talking to your family. It could be a committee that's deciding on your grant. It could be industry partners who might hire you for a job, and so on. What are you communicating? You can't endlessly go on about something that you really like. There has to be something called take-home messages. What is the one thing they can take away from your talk? What is the novel information for them that they can use? Or are you giving them foundational knowledge? Or are you setting expectations about how the world works? You can leave them with more questions than answers, and you can also leave them with insights. Why communicate science at all? You could be contributing to the society. You could be teachers. Many of you hopefully will go on to be teachers, and teaching science is an important part of our lives. You could be persuading people to do something differently. Or in our case, most of you, I'm presuming, are looking for a career in ecology and you'd want to get jobs. And that's another case where you would communicate science. How do you communicate science is what we'll look at right now. And here's where the 10 simple rules come in. Let's look at the first rule. You need to target your audience. It's a cartoon here that shows that there are a bunch of leopards and a pig is talking about predator-prey dynamics. you can't really go into a lecture or agree to give a talk without knowing who your audience are. If I'm communicating with a group of 5-year-olds, the way I'm going to communicate science is going to be different from the way I'm going to communicate with a bunch of professors. And that's simply, there's no excuse in not knowing who your target audience are. That's the first thing you need to be doing in any process of science communication. The second one is being concise. There's nothing more to add, less is more. If you can say something in simple words, use that, and that's enough. Rule number 3, you need to make things into a story. Humans, we are incredible storytellers. We enjoy actual, I mean, look at a five-year-old child who's on the street, and they're all telling stories. Stories make us human. And there's no excuse in not making the science you're communicating into a story. You could then tell stories. For example, I could make a story about how I ended up studying frogs. I used to be in the forest canopy, would climb trees and look at plants. These were orchids that grow on other plants. We call them epiphytes. And one of the evenings when I was studying, I was finishing my work and I was about to get down from the canopy, I saw a frog that jumped and they glided out into the bush below. The tree was about 30 meters tall, and I was really curious to know why a frog was up in the canopy. And what I did was put sound recorders in the canopy and spent several nights in the canopy to find out that not only are there frogs in the canopy, but we ended up describing a new species of a frog as well. So here what I've done is given you a story of what happened in the field. The takeaway points for you would be that the fundamental points would be there could be frogs in the canopy. There could be insights where I said there was a new frog that we discovered. And perhaps something that I didn't tell you is failure. The first time when I climbed the tree and sat there at night, I didn't realize that it was a stupid idea until well into the night. There was lightning and there was a thunderstorm. This was in the monsoon. And we could hear trees falling all around us, and we could see trees being struck by lightning. And if the lightning had struck the tree that I was sitting on, then the entire story would have been a failure. And this is something that we all tend to do. In fact, a lot of us are into ecology because we think we want to study wildlife, or we think we want to save the world. And that's something that matters to us. And in communicating science, we ought to be conveying why it matters to me and why it should matter to you. And like Kelvin here, who thinks Hobbes is the most valuable thing in all his life, we ought to find something that we can make it into a story and convey science in that fashion. And just to quickly also add, typically a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. If you watched a movie, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and an end. If you have read a novel, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. The length of the beginning, middle, and end change, but generally these are 3 components of a story, and every piece of science that is out there can be narrated as a story. Think about the presentation. Many of us are stuck by PowerPoint presentations, but there could be other forms of communicating science. You could be writing poetry. You could be making art. You could be having a dance performance, or you could have a performance like a theater play. You could also have things in your title of your talk or your article that you're writing. You could make that catchy. One of the examples David likes to give is our colleague from Malaysia called Ahimsa. He works on elephants, and he was studying how elephants move between habitats in Thailand. He looked at elephants that move across forest patches in Malaysia, and they put radio collars, and they figured out that the elephants were hanging around by the roadside. Initially, the response for everyone will be, oh, the road is a barrier. Maybe that's why the elephants are hanging around by the roadside. Turns out that elephants keep crossing the road. There's no problem there. And then they wanted to figure out why there are elephants hanging around by the roadside. And they found out that there's more grass that's growing along the roadside. And they came up with a paper, and they wrote a paper that had a title called Shit Happens for a Reason. It's funny, it's humor, and it actually worked. They published this paper, and the reason why shit comes in here is with the grass that's growing there, the elephants are hanging around more in the habitat. There are dung beetles that come in, and they carry the elephant dung, and they propagate they're basically carrying the dung around and enriching the soil also. So there's a cyclical process where there's more grass that's growing in this habitat. One, because of the openness next to the road, but also because these dung beetles are active in recycling the nutrients, and there's more grass, more elephants get there, and they happen to hang around more often. So they managed to publish a paper with this funny title. Sure, it won't always work. Some might find it offensive, but if your story is good enough, or if your story is compelling enough, then you can come up with a catchy title as well. And of course, you can improve without obscuring. Obscuring is something that we all tend to do, and we ought to make science less complicated. Everything in science can be explained to a 5-year-old without obscuring it. If you can convince your 5-year-old about the science that you're doing, you can convince anyone in the world to believe that your science is important. And of course, you could also bring, you could do a show and tell kind of thing, like what Kelvin does here with the snowflake. Of course, if you're studying elephants, it's not always possible, but you could use models, you could use computer simulations. There are multiple things that you can use as tools to communicate your science. Medium is part of the message. Medium is sometimes the message. It could be the spoken word. I'm giving a presentation today. Most of you are listening without seeing me. And the spoken word really becomes important. As a speaker, I should have practiced my speech several times at least. It becomes incredibly annoying if I'm breaking at every sentence with phrases like, I want to talk about today, this is going to be an important presentation for you. Today's talk, I'll have 4 different things. It gets incredibly annoying. You see what I mean? It could also be visual information. If the presentation I'm giving has clunky text, if there is text that's spinning around, if you have known word art, people tend to use that, and it's unfortunate that people use it now. But your information that you're conveying needs to be clean. The slides are clean, they're simple, there's very little text, and you want to be effective by ensuring that there's little confusion for the reader. And of course, we write to communicate science. Writing is a medium, but writing is also an art. And the only way you can get better at it is by doing it more often. If you want to get better at writing, keep writing. None of us were perfect. None of us are perfect. We are all learning in the process, and we need to be using writing as a medium to communicate science. Again, this comes to making visual presentations. If this was a real world scenario where I was in front of you and making a presentation, and if I stood with my hands in my pocket and spoke in a monotonous language without ever moving my hands, without ever moving my slides, this would be an incredibly boring presentation. What we tend to do is move our hands. You look at everybody in the audience. When you're giving presentation, movement of the eyes are also important. You make eye contact with multiple people in the room. You make sure that immediately makes sure people are comfortable with you and you're comfortable with them. And of course, sometimes things don't work out. You end up going to make a presentation and something fails. You should still be able to communicate what you have to tell, because everything is in your head. It's not in your presentation. Your presentation is just a medium that you're communicating. And don't be like this poor trapeze artist who is stuck without wires that are connecting poles. It shouldn't be the case. Using visual displays, figures are your friends. Make sure that you use appropriate figures. Figures also bring in a sense of elegance to your work. And one of the important books that you could look up is this book by Edward Tufte. He talks about maximizing information and pixel. You should maximize information per pixel, basically. And I'll show you in a bit what that means. You need to minimize ambiguity, and you need to avoid chart jump. The first one, maximizing information and pixel. If you think of a classic pie chart, again, one of the unfortunate things that are out there, but everybody tends to use it, or a lot of people tend to use it. If you think about it, there are a bunch of colors and there are thin squiggles that separate them. And it's conveying very little meaning. If there's a pie chart that says 50% said yes, 50% said no, those 50% could be coming from a survey of 500 people and 500 people, or it could just be 2 people. One said yes, one said no, you still show up as 50%. So you're not maximizing the information per pixel conveying using pie charts. Avoiding ambiguity and chart junk. If you look at this figure, the red lines, the red bands that are coming up seem to come up from somewhere in Central America. They seem to originate somewhere here. To me, it gives a sense that this is the epicenter of some event that's happening. And again, you see things like biodiversity loss, climate change, ocean acidification, and all that. And it somehow gives me a sense of intention or impression that it's all happening in Central America, whereas this is not really the case. This is an example of chart junk because the bar graphs or what we have is what is called a rose diagram, is explaining or predicting the impacts on different levels. And it has nothing to do with Central America. It's a global study. And suddenly by adding this globe in the background of this image, I've created unnecessary ambiguity. And this useless piece of information is called chart junk. You don't need to use it. It's not adding any more value to your work. So don't use such things. And again, this paper, as you can see, came out in Nature. It's not like the best journals are the best papers. Things can go anyway in any kind of journal also. Rule number 7, don't forget the context. You need to give enough background information to your audience. If you're not giving background information and immediately start talking about a bamboo frog that lives in bamboo and breeds inside there, all your audience are going to be lost. Whereas if I told you that amphibians are one of the most diverse groups of organisms, they tend to live more in the tropics. Within the tropics, they breed in different habitats. In some of the habitats, they breed inside bamboo. Then you've got a context. In your mind, you can visualize a scenario where there's bamboo, there's frogs breeding in there, and there's something going on. You could also place things, or not could, you should also place things in an appropriate conceptual framework. If I'm talking to you about some kind of a behavior. Earlier today, you had a lecture on behavior by Maria, and if you reflect on the lecture that she gave, everything that was presented had a conceptual framework. For example, she talked about divergence 4 questions. That immediately gives you a conceptual framework where you can place your findings in. And of course, your communication or your steps in communication need to be audience driven. And it clearly depends on what your audience want. And you need to tailor your lecture or your performance to them. And the onus is on you to ensure effective understanding. You can't assume that they'll understand, which means you'll have to practice your talk at multiple levels to your lab mates, to your colleagues, and then see what works and what doesn't. And again, I like to show Calvin a lot. He tends to think he's smart. And I'll just give you a minute to read it. It's a joke about the context. Rule number 8. We need to seek advice. Nobody progresses alone in science. None of us were giving presentations as we were born. We all learned it by either listening to talks or engaging in talks ourselves. And what happens when you seek advice is you tend to capture diverse points of view. Harish might have a different viewpoint, Senji might have a different viewpoint, I might have a different viewpoint on how we approach things. And seeking advice gives you an opportunity to integrate these things into your presentation. And again, you need to be open to suggestion if you're doing this. If not, it's a futile exercise, don't do it. And sometimes people might have that you don't, and it's always better to collaborate with such people. For instance, if I have to make a video documentary of my presentation, and if I'm terrible at making videos, I'd want to collaborate with somebody who knows how the video editing programs work. And also the cartoon here is to give you a sense of caution that while you should seek advice, you shouldn't get bogged down by all the advice that you get. Seek advice, but do what you think is right. Rule number 9, you need to take responsibility. It's your presentation, it's your story. You're the communicator. The onus is on you. If people didn't understand anything at the end of the talk, the joke is on you. You didn't convince them, or you weren't clear enough for them to understand and appreciate what you were saying. One of the key things that you do as a researcher or when you're presenting is you be a good listener. Let's say by the end of this talk, a bunch of you have questions. I can't be distracted, poking my ear and looking somewhere away. I need to focus on you. I need to look at you when you are speaking and give you the entire attention that I have. And that's what ensures that you're able to respond or you're able to reflect back on what the question was. The other good practice that we always tell people to follow is if somebody is asking you a question, pay attention and then repeat the question. It works in two ways. One, it gives you more time to articulate what the question was and come up with a good answer. And two, it helps others in the audience understand what the question was. Often people are not paying attention and they might miss out on what the question was. And of course, you need to be available and be helpful. Sometimes we end up saying that, oh, you know what, I'm going to take this. There's a longer discussion. I'll take it outside. And then when you say that, you can't be taking off after the talk. You need to stick around. You need to talk to the audience that are out there. And again, there's a good example of Calvin. Life's a lot more fun when you're not responsible for your actions. Although it is fun, it won't really get you too far in communicating science. Moral of the story, you need to be responsible for your actions. Rule number 10, acknowledge help. Again, nobody succeeds alone in science. The team is often a part of the story. All of us we don't work alone in all our fields. It's always a we, but sometimes we end up saying, I did this or I did that. It's okay to say that if it's actually your work, if it's your thesis dissertation, then I'd rather see I did this and I did this. Whereas deep down, we all know we work as a team. It's always multiple people. You also need to be humble and not condescending. If somebody asks a question that sounds obvious to you, sounds like they weren't paying attention to your talk at all, it's very easy for us to be condescending in our responses, but avoid that urge. Be humble. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they lost you initially, and the rest of it they couldn't follow. So be humble. Try to explain as best as you can about what you were trying to ask. And here's Kelvin thinking that he alone shall do things, but his mom pulls him away and gets him to do what she wants. So that's the 10 general rules. In general, just to broadly generalize, know your audience. You need to know your subject. There's no excuse. I mean, I can't go on stage and talk about the Milky Way because my knowledge on that subject is rather limited. And I need to know my purpose. If it's a job talk, then the job is to impress the audience on how great or how awesome my science is. If the talk is to a bunch of children and the idea is to communicate some basic fundamental aspects of ecology, then my task is different. In either case, I need to be accurate, brief, and clear. There's no excuse. There's no point rambling on and on and on about something. And in the end, take responsibility. If people are not appreciating what you were trying to convey, then maybe there's something wrong, or maybe there is something that you could change, something that you could do differently to be able to engage with audience better. Cool. So here are the 10 simple rules that we have, and I'm happy to take questions. I'll stop here. Questions, comments, anyone?
I don't see any questions in the chat.
Okay.
Cool. Sheshadri, maybe you can leave your email ID or something in which people can maybe write to you.
Of course.
Yeah, you can put it up in the chat as well, just in case they have questions for you later.
How to avoid cold feet? It's a good question. I don't know. You practice with a friendly audience, you talk to your lab mates, you talk to, I'm assuming you're in a lab. Madhushri has this question. I'm assuming you're in a lab already. If not, if you have a bunch of friends, maybe you present in front of them. And again, there's no silver bullet. The only way you get over the cold feet aspect is to practice multiple times. And David used to he used to say that for giving a good lecture, you need to have practiced your talk at least 30 times. Most often, none of us do that. I typically practice about 2 or 3 times, but it's not enough. What do I mean by repetition in a conference? You can't be repeating something you've said multiple times because you have a 15-minute slot. And if you look at the lecture that we just saw, there are 10 simple rules, and the only place I repeated them is in the end. So if I was repeating the first one as know your audience thing, if that was the rule, in a conference talk, I can't be repeating that every 2 times or every 3 times. You can repeat things, but don't do it too much. Whereas if you're writing a popular science article or if you're writing a journal article, you could repeat things in a way that the reader knows what you're talking about. Sorry, the other way around, yeah. In a journal article, you can't repeat because people can go back and read. Whereas in a conference talk, you can repeat a few times. But again, not so much that the talk becomes a repetition of itself. But whereas in a journal article, you say what your objectives are and you don't repeat them again and again. It's there in that section. People can go back and read the objectives, for example. Whereas in a conference, if you state your introduction, you have an objective, you have a slide that says your questions or predictions. And when you go to your results, what you can do is instead of having a text that says results, you can either have that and then have a subtext of what your question 1 was, what your question 2 was. So you are repeating in a way, but you're also reminding the reader what they should be expecting, which is not necessary in a paper because they can go back and read. I hope I answered your question. Any other questions? Questions to Senji also. Come on, guys, communicate. It's a communications session.
Yeah, and also about how to not get nervous before the talk, right? When I'm giving a scientific talk, I have this thing in my head that I am the one doing this research. I know the most about what I'm doing than who's listening to the talk. So I go onto the stage with that confidence that I know what I'm doing. So that could also be helpful if you get nervous about talking.
That's a good way of doing it, but somehow I feel that there's a risk of becoming condescending or sounding condescending unintentionally.
Yeah.
Which is something that it can hurt both ways. People might like it, or people might think that, oh, this person is so. That's a risk, but I mean, if that works, use whatever works. I mean, people avoid coffee. People go and practice their like how they do with singing, right?
Yes.
So I mean, there are multiple ways, and I think the only way is you present enough.
Yes.
Use every opportunity to present. I mean, go talk to your grandmother if she's around. Tell them about your science, and that usually gets you comfortable with speaking about your own work.
Yes, definitely. There's no substitute to practicing, obviously. Yeah.
But that's a good point. I didn't think of it that way. Good. How are we on time, Harish?
We're early, but if people don't have questions, they can take a break and come after 15 minutes for the next session.
Okay, that's the session on
careers in ecology.
Yeah. Perfect. Great. I don't see any other questions. I don't know if there's a YouTube thing with questions there.
No, the YouTube doesn't have. I am looking that up.
You're monitoring.
There's
Okay.
no
Great.
live chat. No, nothing. There's just about 5 people there.
Okay.
Cool. So thank you, guys. Be
thank-
back by 3:25 possible. We'll start the session at around 3:30. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, Sheshadri. Thank you,
Okay.
Senji, for this
Thanks,
wonderful.
everyone. Thanks for listening. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks for listening.
Hello, Harish.
Hi, Ravi. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I just wanted to check if I'm on the correct link.
Yeah. Do you have a presentation or something that you need to check, or will you just be giving a talk? Hi, Anurag. Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great.
So you'll be going first
Okay.
because you said you wanted to leave early. Senji informed.
Yeah.
Do you have a presentation or something that you'll be sharing, or you want to check in? Or are you going to just give a talk?
I'll just talk. I'll
Yeah,
rather take
fine.
questions from people than giving the talk because
Perfect.
I don't know when
No,
I'll
no.
lose network.
Yeah,
So
that'll work. But I think it's important you give your journey so that they can ask relevant questions as well.
yeah, sure.
Ravi, did you want to ask something?
No. I'm just
Cool. Anurag, we'll wait for a couple of minutes and then start.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. How many participants are you expecting?
Sorry. I was just saying there are about 15 participants right now,
Okay.
but maybe
It's
five
entirely
or
online?
this is all entirely online. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we'll start the session. This is the session on careers in ecology. Can you guys hear me? Can one of the participants?
Yes.
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, thank you.
Harish. This is Nikita.
Oh, hi, Nikita.
Hi, Harish. Hi, everyone.
So I guess most of the invited speakers are also here. So let me start. So this is a session on careers in ecology. It's to ensure that people get beside the academic path, which is to do a PhD, finish your research, do your postdoc, and get a faculty position in universities. We wanted to let the participants know that there are other career paths they could choose as well. So invited here are people of various different career options which they have chosen, from scientific illustrations to related to data science, to education, to being part of the forest services, and people who have started their own research organization. With that, let me first start off with a questionnaire that we sent out. Sorry, move the slide. Yeah. So this is the sort of questions we sent out to our speakers today. Yeah. So we wanted to know what curricular and extracurricular skills the speakers picked up during their research stage and which helped them during their current job. We also wanted to know how they trained themselves for the current career option that they've selected. And we also wanted to know why they chose this career option post their PhD or research work. And where did they get to know about this particular field they are in? And how do they organize their work? How did they earlier organize their work schedule, and how different it is right now as compared to when they were doing research? And how did they actually decide that this career option is a good fit for them? So these are the set of questions we sent out to them. We thought the participants would be wanting to hear about. But of course, the participants are free to type in their questions in the chat box, and the speakers today will be happy to hear. With that, I'll start with our first speaker, Anurag Mishra. He's a ICER Pune BSMS graduate. He specialized in ecology and evolutionary biology. His primary interest is in herpetofauna. He worked in NCBS as a JRF after his stint with ICER, and is currently in the Indian Forest Service, which is quite unique. He is posted in Odisha. Yeah. So
yeah. Nice.
I would ask the participants to mute themselves unless they want to ask a question. So with that, I would invite Anurag Mishra to chat with us. I'm closing this. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Anurag Mishra, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. So, yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's been a long time since I have come to IIS as well.
Anurag, can you hold the phone or anything a little up close? We're not able to hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, slightly better. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, yeah, I'll just dive into the question that you had sent me. So, the first question was, so I think you missed, I don't know if I didn't send it to you or you missed out that part, but I joined a PhD in ETH Zurich after NCBS, which I left in a year because I did not like academia as I thought I would. And after that is when I decided to study for the Forest Service, and then I joined in 2020. So first question was about skills that I picked up during my career in research, right? Okay, so
That's correct, Anurag. Yeah.
yeah,
Go on.
yeah. So yeah, I don't think I picked up any tangible skills during PhD. The UPSC exams are actually a lot about just preparing a huge syllabus, and the curriculum is nicer, and the pattern of examinations that were held there, which were mostly objective, application-based experiments, and individual projects. This is very different from what the IFS syllabus demands, and the answers there are mostly long answers, descriptive, not very imagination-based, if I may say. So, I mean, even though I was familiar with a lot of things, the preparation still had to be from scratch. However, I would credit ISER with the way they taught things. Like, I wasn't afraid of tackling something new. Like, that is something that happens in research on a daily basis. Things go wrong. You have to introspect, go troubleshoot. So that way, I think that helped me a lot. And what was the second question? Can you please? I'm using the phone, so I can't. I think it was what are the extra skills I had to pick up?
1 minute. Let me just get back to your questions. 1 minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you pick Indian Forest Service as a career option in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the main reason I switched from academia was to have a bit more financial stability. I really enjoyed research, the whole process of scientific inquiry, but I just felt it wasn't worth the hassle when shifting from one position to another. Like, you know how things are, your fellowships end before you have published your papers, and for a few months you are depending on this source and that source for money, and there's cutthroat competition now, especially in the past few years, I think, for a few good positions. So many times you have to do unpaid or very underpaid positions even as a post grad. So I was also not very comfortable with how much power this single recommendation letter and in turn the person who wrote your recommendation letter had on how your career progresses. And I was mostly in this field. I mean, I thought the only way to work with wildlife and environment was to be in academia. And so at one point when I felt that this wasn't the only way I could, then I thought I could pick up some other career. And my motivation was more to spend time in the field than to actually make some groundbreaking discoveries through research. So even if I left research, I still wanted to continue being a naturalist, and I still wanted to continue being in the field. And because of that, I mean, I did weigh up options like science journalism or science communication, and I just felt IFS was a much more better fit with what I wanted to do. And I think the other question was about my work schedule. Right?
Yes.
So there is one question on what extra skills I had to pick up. So I mean, I just basically had to prepare for a government service exam all over. And if there's anyone who's interested in the forest service or wants to prepare, I'll be happy to chat with them separately. You can share my contact because the whole process strategy, the preparation is like a whole different conversation on its own. I don't think we should go into that here. Okay, so you asked about the work schedule, right? It's actually very different. Like things are very different on a day-to-day basis. It's difficult to plan your day, and there is so much more human interaction. Like outside of the science and technical aspects, one needs to be very aware of the cultural sensitivities in a place, economic aspects, the legal framework. The scale at which you work is also much more in every aspect you can imagine. Like during my masters, in fact, during all my undergrad years in ISER, I worked with Ramana Atreya in Eagle Nest Wildlife Sanctuary, and Eagle Nest is a range, and there are around 5 ranges in a division. And like right now, I'm in charge of a division, so there's around 5 ranges, each about 80,000 hectares. So imagine that's the geographical range, and there are around 150 staff engaged in various capacities in the field and in the office. So the scale is, I mean, is something that I still haven't wrapped my head around, to be honest. And after that, like whatever work you sanction, there are field visits. Some of it is in the forest. I enjoy the field inspection for the forest related work, but there's also a lot of civil construction, your watchtowers, the facilities for your ground staff, all of that. Uh, Having said that, the district magistrate, the collector, and the police superintendent, they obviously have a lot more meeting and public interaction than a DFO. As a researcher, I could be isolated and do everything on my own, but in the forest, as a DFO, you're mostly a manager. So majority of your work is delegating well and following up. And after that, you basically represent your department at various district and state level meetings. The job is administrative, which means a good part of the job is to prevent bad things from happening, be it human-wildlife conflict, forest encroachment, poaching. Of course, there are plantations, of course, like there's joint forest management and all of that, but the things that can cause you trouble in terms of your job is mostly preventing these negative things, like the things that it's sort of a housekeeping job at many times. The job profile also varies a lot from one place to another. For example, in a proper territorial division, the work is mostly to prevent offenses, plantations, then doing forest diversions in the least damaged routes. Wildlife Heavy Division, you'll have census monitoring and habitat improvement measures and all that. So each set will have its own each place will have its own set of pros, cons, challenges, benefits, however you look at it. And I feel coming from a background in ecology, it's actually, I would come in thinking that I could do a lot because I have a background, but I'm also slowly realizing that a very simple thing as this pieces of trees should be planted in this place and in this ecology, it's very difficult to turn that into actionable SOPs for your ground staff to follow. And there are just so many different things that go from, something that should be done and actually executing it. So that is something that I hope to get better at. And yeah, that's pretty much what I had to say about the questions that had been put. And I'll be happy to take questions from the participants.
Thank you,
Whatever
Anurag.
they have.
Yeah. The participants, if you can type in your question or actually unmute yourself and ask questions, that will be fine now. We'll be taking questions now. Anurag, if you can leave your email ID with the participants in the chat box, or I can ask Senji to leave it as well if you're finding it hard to type it.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So just in case they think of a question later on, they'll probably get in touch with you.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Anurag. This was very useful. Yeah. It's great to have such a unique field that you've gone into after your research. So let's go with the next speaker. Mehreen, are you around? Sorry, I didn't check whether.
Yeah, hi Harish. Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Mehreen. So the next speaker will be Mehreen. Mehreen also did a bachelor's and master's from ISER, but this is ISER Mohali. She joined CSISC for a PhD and worked on the Himalayan grey langurs in Kashmir Himalayas. A lot of her work involved trying to understand people's perception towards wildlife, and post her PhD, she started an organization called Wildlife Research and Conservation Foundation. So the aim of the organization is to spread awareness about the flora and fauna and encourage youth for the conservation. So Mehreen actually manages this organization, and while actually doing a lot of scientific project as well related to the biodiversity of Kashmir. So with that, Mehreen, you can take over. Yeah.
Yeah. So, is it okay if the video is not on? I believe it's okay, I guess.
Absolutely fine if the video is not on. Yeah.
So, starting off with the work that the skills that we got, or the both curricular or extracurricular skills that we receive. Um, I would say that the apart from the curricular skills was in PhD. All of us are aware that one of the important aspect of the PhD work is to get your work funded. So that was the one very important thing that I learned or picked up during my PhD work. And dealing with big data sets, this is something that we all do, and analyzing, interpreting your data was something. And after interpreting, making it um, you know translated to people who can really understand this work. So these were the two important skills that I would say that I picked up during my research. Other than that, few extracurricular skills that I picked up during my PhD was one, dealing with people of different age groups, of different intellect. You have to, if you are conducting a let's say a questionnaire or an interview based, if your work is something like an interview based, you have to ask certain kind of questions so that you get the right kind of answer. So that was something that I really picked up. Communication was one of the things that I picked up. Another thing, because most of our work is field based, so living in very minimal possible conditions was the other thing. And the most important thing during PhD was understanding that time is the key, getting things done in the speculated time frame, because that was something that helped me in the current work that I do. Because in this case also, we are given a deadline, or we give people a deadline, and we ask them to deliver such and such work in such and such time. That was something that I really um, um, uh, you know uh, could include in my skill set. Other than that, mentoring students and getting them interested in the kind of work that you do in their language. These were some of the, I would say, life skills for the current work that I do. Um, and The second question that you have asked is, how did we train ourselves for the work? Well, if you think about it, I had to start from the scratch. I did not know how an organization is registered in the first place. What are the rules and regulations of registering an organization? Number two, I had to look up for various laws. Suppose there are trusts, there are societies, where to fit in the organization, in which setup. And then looking up to finances, how will the finances be taxed, dealing with chartered accountants, getting all the certificates done which you need for getting, running your organization. So this was something that I had to train myself uh, to get this thing going. And I had to learn to convince people in a way that they can see your potential, they can see you based on what you show them. So this is also something that we learn in our PhD or during our research work. You have to convince people that your work is true to the best of the knowledge, and so that the committee is convinced well of. So I had to do all these things in front of managers. Anurag is one of the um, I would say, a forest official. So people of his cadre, we have to go to these people, convince them that this and this project seems to fit work for the wildlife sanctuary or for the protected area. This needs to be implemented. We think this from an ecologist point of view, and we have to convince managers like him to get our things done. Right. So this was something that I had to really train myself, and the important thing that I had to train myself was to build in the self confidence. That if you have the self confidence to go and talk to people and convince them for so and so project and for so and so work, you can do wonders in that. Apart from that, I had to learn, um, developing a website, and then making starting off with membership deals so that people can come and become members of your organization, making them understand the work. So for example, if there is a project that we are thinking of doing, it should be very clear in my mind what I want to do. Once I am clear with that, I can translate the same thing to the other students as well. So students would come and ask again and again that this is something that I've done. What is the next thing that I have to do? So I have to think on multiple projects simultaneously, and I believe that's something that you have to get yourself trained for. Um, your third question is what made you choose this line of career? Well, um, the current work did not deviate much from my research work. It's just that I'm doing more of a managerial sort of work right now. But the research or the way we did our PhD this is something similar that I do currently. So the ingredients sort of remain the same, but the recipe has changed a bit. Um, but one important point that I have to add is I also teach in a college, and so that I could keep up my finances with my finances. And I wanted to get stay in touch with academics. So this current work does not uh, give me much exposure towards academics. So in order to keep that thing in me as well, I had to teach in a college to stay in touch with academics and simultaneously run this or manage this organization that you talked about. Um, um, so the next thing that you have asked is, how did you get to hear about your current career as an option? So very honestly, I've never thought of, or I never thought of, setting up an organization and managing things. I had a very typical mindset, that finish off your BSMS, then go for your PhD, and then postdoc, and then go into academics, establish a lab, um, mentor PhDs, master students, and do your research work or get your research work done simultaneously. I had that kind of a mindset. I never thought of starting up an organization and managing the things in a different way. So this current work is mostly passion driven, and I would also say that um, I at some point I knew that I had to stay in Kashmir, and I wanted to do something over here only. And I also knew that getting into academics will be slightly difficult over here, or getting into a university or an institute will be slightly difficult. So this is something that I had actually thought of doing, but I'm doing that uh, outside a university or outside an institute setup. So yeah, and it slightly gets a bit tricky while organizing the current work schedule for this, because I have to set up meetings with people, with concerned departments. Wildlife department is one of them, and show them their plan of action. You have to keep on working in this case, you know. So I manage my college from 10 to 4, have to prepare for classes, and then get back to what I really want to do, or what, get things done over here. So it gets, there are days when the schedule is super tight, and then there are days when there is nothing to do. So it gets a bit tricky that way. And how did I decide that this is the career option, if this is if this is a good fit for me? I believe as long as it keeps me happy, and as long as I'm getting new ideas, this seems to be the good fit. The moment I believe, I think that this is not a good fit, or I'm not going anywhere, or this is not taking me anywhere, maybe I'll switch to something else. But currently this is something that I want to do and have been doing for the past 2 years now, I think. Yeah. um Before we move to question answer. I have a quick video that we made for the organization. I really want to show it to you. Can I share my screen?
Sure, Mehreen. How long is the video? Just to keep in time.
It's a 45-second short video.
Oh, great. Then yes, you can share your screen. Yeah, let me just close mine. Yeah.
Okay. Can you see this?
It's just a blank. Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, so this was more or less an introduction to what we do and sort of the things that I do in a way, or I manage.
If anybody has questions, they can unmute themselves and ask. Yeah. Mehreen, if you would like to share your email ID with the participants, that'll be great in case they'd want to ask you questions later.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Mehreen. That was very insightful as well. We'll start with the next speaker. Ravi Jambekar. Ravi Jambekar is an urban biodiversity specialist. He is from currently a faculty at the Indian Institute of Human Settlements, but he's done his PhD with at the CES, Indian Institute of Science, and his PhD was on the effect of landscape features on fragmentation and habitat type on butterfly populations in Western Ghats. But he's here specifically because of his interest in natural history and as a botanical artist. He does most of his illustrations for various organizations, as well as writes many articles for magazines. And all of this he does because he wants to make sure create an awareness related to biodiversity using both art and science. With that, Ravi, if you're around, you want to share your screen?
Hello, hi Harish.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing my screen and you can.
Yes. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, Ravi. Yeah.
Hello, so good afternoon, everyone. As Harish introduced, I started my journey as an ecologist, and I studied the effects of landscape features such as habitat area, habitat type, and like the distance between the patches on butterfly species in the Western Ghats. And I did my PhD fieldwork for about 3 to 4 years in Goa, Maharashtra, Karnataka area. And I'll just show a short clip of how we used to follow butterflies and collect data. So here is one of my study species, and we would take behavior observations on these butterflies, how much time they spend feeding on flowers, how much time they spend flying. And we were trying to correlate these behaviors with the resources in the landscape. So while doing my PhD, I used to get a lot of time to observe nature, observe butterflies, observe birds, look at the different plants and the biodiversity that is there in the Western Ghats. And I thought, why not start sketching or illustrating these natural beauties that are there when I get spare time after my data collection on field. So I acquired maybe 2 skills while doing my PhD. One was observing nature very closely, or in terms of terms of photographs or videos. And the other skill was sketching or drawing. I didn't have a formal background in painting or sketching. It's something I just picked up during school and during my college, and I would just practice whenever I would get time. And I started making some everyday things that one observes. So the easiest thing to sketch or illustrate were plants or plant parts such as leaves or flowers. So I would get one leaf, one dried leaf of any random plant that I would see on field. And in the evening when I'm back in the field station, I would spend some time sketching or painting it. And that's how I trained myself in something that I had interest in. It was a hobby initially. And what I started doing was I started posting these leaves or plant sketches that I'm doing every day on Instagram. Not in not thinking of it as a career option, but just to practice my skills and get more insights into the structure of leaves, the structure of butterfly wings. So whatever sketches I was making, I started putting these paintings or illustrations out there on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And till this time, I had not realized that natural history illustration or botanical art could be a career option. I was still on the standard traditional research track kind of a career. And when I started posting all these illustrations on social media, I started getting requests initially from friends or colleagues in the department that, hey, I see that you have been illustrating. We have discovered a new species of plant. Can you make a illustration for the publication that we are writing? Or we are writing a popular science article in some journal. Will you be willing to contribute some of your illustrations for that? And that's how it slowly began. And I thought, if the things that I'm making, can I charge for this and get some money out of it? And when I started accepting these small commissions, bigger commissions from international NGOs, big book publishing houses such as Pratham Books, and even like corporate firms started approaching me for natural history art. So what you are seeing on the screen is a series that I did for ICLEI. It's an international NGO, and their Southeast Asia office is in Delhi. And they wanted me to illustrate the 10 most commonly seen trees in the Indian subcontinent and the cultural, ecological, regulating and supporting services that these trees provide to humans. And this was one of my big projects that I did in 2021. And then I have illustrated for ISC's Connect magazine and like some leading coffee brands in India. I have also illustrated for children's books like done by NCF and Pratham Books. And now I'm doing it almost like 50-50 kind of work schedule, like 50% is research and 50% is art. And few of my current projects involve working with the Biodiversity Collaborative, and we are coming out with a book which will be an illustrated book of 50 invasive plant species that are commonly found in India. So yes, so to answer a question about work schedule, I try to find some time every day to sketch or illustrate, and I accept my freelance commission projects from NGOs and forest department and children's book houses and all, and I try to do it on the weekend, and during the week I have a regular academic position where I do research, I do statistical analysis, and it involves a lot of writing and publishing papers and stuff. So yes, that has been my journey so far. And I'm trying to do both art and science. And going forward, I would like to do more of both of these things. Maybe like for the research I am doing, I would like to illustrate for it myself. Right now, I have not gotten an opportunity to do that. I have been illustrating for projects that are commissioned by somebody else or are externally funded. But for my own research, I have not made any art related things. So this is a diary that I made for Mehreen's organization. So I wanted to show this to all of you. And this is one of the illustrations that I have made for a biodiversity book that we are writing at my current job, which is the Indian Institute for Human Settlements. If there are any questions, I would be happy to take them now.
Thank you, Ravi. To look at those illustrations was very nice. Ravi, if you can
Yes.
also share your email ID with the participants, that will be great. I don't see anybody asking any questions yet.
I have shared my ID.
Thanks, Ravi. Does anybody have any questions? Cool. Okay. So let me go to the next participant. Yeah. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you for the talk. Hope you can see my screen. So the next speaker is Nikita Zakaria. She joined CES IISc for a master's and PhD dissertation. And her PhD work, which she did in CES IISc, was trying to examine the process of termite mold construction. It was a very interdisciplinary project with ecology and civil engineering. And post her PhD thesis, she joined Dell Technologies as an advisor for business intelligence. To talk about that more, let me invite Nikita. Nikita, are you around?
Yes. Hello. Thank you, Harish.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Harish, for the introduction. I worked in CES for about 7.5 years. And after that, I joined Dell Technologies in the field of business intelligence. So what am I currently doing? And then I'll follow up with the questions that Harish has shared. So the question is, what is business intelligence? Well, in simple terms, I use data to drive business decisions. So as you're aware, there is a lot of data in every field now, and organizations need people who can analyze that data to make decisions. So business intelligence is exactly that. We use data to drive business decisions. It's different from data analyst role or data scientist role, which roles are more data focused. This role is more business focused. So you need a good understanding of data as well as a good understanding of business. Right, so that's what I'm doing currently. What skills did I pick up during my PhD that helped me with my current job? Well, let me start off by saying that during PhD, we learn a lot of skills, but we don't know how to do proper nomenclature of the skills and how to advertise them. Things that sound trivial in academia or are taken for granted are actually very valuable in the corporate setting. For example, statistics and analytics. We all do it all the time. And we've taken so many courses in CS, add-on courses, and we have been using data all the time, especially R. So this is a very valuable skill in the corporate sector today. Similarly, things like, we don't even use these nomenclatures, but you can call end-to-end project management. What is it? It's nothing but what we are doing in our PhD, like project conceptualization, literature survey, finding open problems in a field, defining a research problem, experimental design, data collection, statistics, and then communicating to technical and non-technical audience. Each of these skills is very valuable. Then in my case, I had an interdisciplinary project between ecology and civil engineering. Now I could use that as an example to demonstrate that I have the ability to communicate across disciplines. Now, all of us have collaborated with somebody, at least. May not be as distant disciplines as ecology and civil engineering, but it could be any discipline. Many of you have engineering collaborations or collaborations with molecular biology or some of these labs. So you can use that as an example to demonstrate that we can communicate across disciplines easily. Then comes things like stakeholder management. So working with a lot of people, maybe your PI, your colleagues, and getting technical support from a lot of people, or sometimes even co-opting techniques from one field to another. Another important skill would be conflict resolution. It's not about people conflict resolution. It could also be about managing conflicting priorities or conflicting timelines, and then innovative thinking. So these are all soft skills that we have, but we rarely jot them down in a resume. And if we do jot them down in a resume, they become very valuable for a corporate setting, in a corporate setting. Now, apart from this, what did I learn, or how did I train myself for my current job? So I started looking for jobs, well, towards the end of my PhD, trying to understand what all can I do with my PhD, and what are the jobs after PhD. I reached out to IISc Placement Cell. I looked at the website called Cheeky Scientist, and I recommend all of you to go to their website and follow him on LinkedIn, Cheeky Scientist. And then I started looking at all these companies. What are they looking for? Where do my skills fit in? And most importantly, how to turn an academic CV into a resume. So I learned all of these skills just by doing Google search, searching different websites, going to ISC placement cell. And slowly, gradually, I learned what skill sets can be used in other fields. Again, it was just a trial and error, discovering everything from scratch. So it took quite some time, but slowly and gradually things worked out. But let me tell you that this process doesn't end with getting a job. So every single day we have to reskill and upskill ourselves and keep fitting ourselves in the job. Right. Then coming to the next question, what made you choose this line of career after your PhD research work? Well, two things. First, the big question of what after postdoc. So ultimately we have to look for a job. And therefore I said, okay, let me look for a job at the earliest. And that was after PhD. So that was one motivation. The other thing was that most science-related hardcore research jobs are available abroad. So I was also exploring what can I do in India? And that's how I stumbled upon some of these jobs. But I continued exploring postdocs as well. So academic jobs, teaching jobs, IT sector, educational technology sector, analytics related jobs in biomedical sector. I kept on exploring them, and that's how I came across some of these jobs. Right. So where did you hear about your current career as an option? So every company has a job portal. So you can visit these portals, visit their website, and look for open positions in that company. Or you could look for open positions on LinkedIn. And that's what I did. Went to the website, searched for a job, looked in LinkedIn, then went to the website and applied there. How do you organize your current work schedule? Is it very different from how you used to work while doing research? Well, it entirely depends on the company you join. We all know how research works, 24/7, and you have to design your time, design the project, decide your timelines, decide everything. In a company like this, a lot of it depends on the company and the role. Like my role is I'm part of a global team, so I have to coordinate with colleagues, but it's all about working 5 days a week, no weekends. Like very, very rarely you would work on a weekend. And the work-life balance is pretty good. So yeah, but it depends on the demand of the company. And finally, how did you decide this career option is a good fit for you? Okay, so I didn't decide it earlier. It was a post hoc decision. So I applied for all job openings available at the time of my PhD through LinkedIn, through job portals, through ISC placement cell, applied for postdocs, and I got several offers. And based on the available options, I made a choice. So this is what I would suggest everyone. Please go and apply far and wide, apply to everything possible. And once you have the options, then make a call. But don't restrict yourself while applying for positions. Just apply, whether it's postdoc, whether it's IT sector or any other sector, just keep applying. And I'm happy to help you. If you want to reach out to me, please do. I'll share my mail. Do let me know if I can help you in some way. That's it. Open for questions. Go ahead. Harish or anybody, if you have questions?
Yes, we are around. Seems like the participants don't have any questions as of now. But the last speaker, after the last talk, which is the next 10-15 minutes, maybe the speakers can hang around and maybe the participants will be open to questions after that as well. So it'll be great if the speakers hang around, if they can, that is.
Sure.
Probably Anurag has already left, I think, but hopefully the others are around. So let me go to the next speaker. Sorry, 1 minute. So the next speaker is Nitin Saxena. Nitin studied evolutionary pattern of migration of birds in CES-IISc. He's currently an assistant professor in the microbiology department of St. Joseph's University. But he's here to talk about his coaching center, in which he coaches students from 5th grade onwards. So broadly, his interest lies in ecology, evolution, behavior, statistics, and education. I think if Nitin is around, he'll talk to us more about his interest in education. Yeah. Nitin, are you around? Nitin?
Yes.
I'm
there. Hi.
Hi.
So
Hi.
at present in the college, so the background is a instrumentation room right now. Here you can see some instruments are lying around. Okay. Hi everyone. Hope you are enjoying these sessions. And I got to hear my senior today. It was such a lovely change of a pace. Hi Nikita, so nice to hear you. And I don't think I will add anything more to what you have already said.
Hello, hi Nitin.
Hi.
How are you?
Yeah. So I thought it would be easier for me to walk through the questions that was given with a small presentation. Can I share my screen here?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. Is this visible to all of you?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me just go to this. Has to go away. Wait. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So the first question that was, as Nikita has already listed out many of them, what skills did we pick up during our PhD? So there were a lot of skills, to be honest, that you actually end up picking in your PhD, and some are by choice, like you realize that you have to pick it up, and other just comes to you because of the process that you go through, right? Like for example, patience is something that will come to you because of the process and not because of your own deliberate efforts towards it. Multitasking is another one such skills that you end up picking during your PhD, because there will be too many things that you have to parallelly do. Like for example, you will be at the same time you are attending your courses, then you are also thinking of a small project to work parallelly to gain up the skill set, whether it is a wet lab skill or a dry lab skill that you have to do for the questions that you are trying to think of for your PhD. It can also be as like organizing small events for the student community and attending workshops, seminars, conferences to learn more. So there will be many things that are parallelly happening. And so you end up doing multitasking. Towards the end, you will also learn how to enterprise yourself. And this is a skill that you will develop because you want to. And it is a very, aware, conscious effort that you have to put towards picking up this skill. Because if you are failing to pick up this skill, you will find it very difficult to, communicate and approach people and then apply for grants. So you have to become a bit more enterprising. So this is something you have to learn gradually. Towards the end, you also become very self-confident about the things that you have learned. You may become confident, you may not become. That also depends on you partly. So you have to keep a track of what you have achieved. So many a times we are not that kind enough to ourselves, and we always downplay that, oh, I'm not that good enough. That is something hinders the process. So I believe that somewhere you have to also keep a track of what progresses you are making, despite of the challenges that you have come across. Marketing skills also you learn, because you have to pitch your idea to so many conferences over the period of time, or a very short span. Sometimes you have to even give a speed talk. And a speed talk is basically like in 3 minutes, you have to give the idea to everybody about what you're doing and why that is worth doing. So you learn a lot of marketing skills. Event management, well, Harish can talk about it more. See, he has already organized a wonderful event here along with others. So you learn all those skills, how to coordinate, how to communicate with people, how to manage time and things, and all that comes with these event management skills. So I would say that whenever the opportunity comes to you to conduct any event or organize an event, jump to that opportunity, because it will really make you learn a lot new skill sets, which you might not get otherwise in a regular academic run. You also become a lot entrepreneurial, because many a times you take tangential directions to what you are learning in your PhD, and you bring it as a product outwards, and you create your own niche. Okay. So that is also something happens partly, and partly you have to be more conscious about it to pick those skills. Believe me or not, you will become a very empathetic person during your PhD, and not because of the bad experience, but rather of the good experiences too. Okay. And you become mental health alive, because you get time to acknowledge your thought process, and you can also then equally respect others' thought process too, because there will be a lot of contradictions. There will be a lot of discussions which are open-ended discussions, and somewhere you have to learn how to respect other person's perspective also. So that allows you to become a mental health ally. You learn a lot of people management, because you will, if you're a field person, there will be a whole different set of people you will come across. If you are working in a lab with multiple hierarchy levels, then again, there's a lot of people management skills that you will end up developing. If you are working in a lab which is a very new lab and there aren't any enough people, then you learn how to do other kind of people management, like you have to set up the lab, you have to contribute towards the setting up lab, purchasing orders, and a lot of other such kind of work. The chemicals you want to buy, you have to negotiate because you have limited grant. So, and then later on you will have some project assistants who will help you with your project. So you have to manage your interactions with them as well. So you learn a lot of these skills during your PhD. So the next question there was things had to learn to get the job. Well, yes, while you are learning all of those skills, and they will definitely add to your CV, there are other skills which each job brings on its own, right? As Nikita said, that sometimes you have chosen a career so far from your regular PhD work that there is a new plethora of tasks that you have to learn, a skill set you have to pick up. And sometimes it is more to do with just what the job demands. So in my case, what I learned, I will talk about my journey, was something that was time management. In PhD, somewhere, there is this much of time available to me. But, and that is a very, if you just think of it, I have a 5 year of PhD, then it is a huge amount of time, right? So you take it at your own pace. But once you enter in a corporate job or any kind of a job and not just research, once it starts remunerating you, it comes with a time foundation, and thus comes the need of time management at a much rigorous pace. Well, you do time management in your PhD as well, but not at that same scale as micromanaging scale as you do once you're doing your job. You learn a lot more administrative skills. I personally learned a lot more administrative skills because I was running a coaching center as well, along with my full-time job. And so that gave me a lot of administrative skills as well. Trade-offs between your interest and job tasks. See, if you are doing something for yourself, like for example, my coaching, I had to trade off with my own personal interest or the time I want free for myself, because this was my baby, right? It was something that I have created. So it will demand way more from me than a regular job, because a regular job, I can say 9 to 5, I have finished my work, I can go home. But this was off-hour task for me. I have to pitch in the time, whatever I have available, and whatever the setup required of me. So there were arts like initial setup, like the interior itself I had done for my coaching, and that required a lot of sitting at the coaching, working with the workers who were doing the interior job, then publicizing and advertising about it, talking to the parents, creating events for promotion. So all of that was off hours, because I had a main job running, which was already taking my 9 to 5. So I had to figure out the pockets of time. So that means the time that I wanted to learn something else, let's say, for example, if I want to pick up any vocational skill or something and I wanted to do it in that period, I cannot. I have to give up that for some time because I want to set up this as well. So that's where the trade-off and the prioritizing comes, which you learn with the job. Next thing was, why this career? Well, that's a very interesting question. And as Nikita said, partly it comes post hoc to you. During your PhD journey, you pick up on the things that you are getting more aligned with than things that doesn't work for you. Like what was not working for me in the research was the rigid structure of the research, as well as the high demand and the competition, which was very overwhelming for me personally speaking. So it wasn't aligning with the interest that I had, long-term interest, the long-term goals that I had, which was more in terms of, free research and freehand research and, mental health contributions as well as education contribution. So since those were my long-term goals, it became very clear to me that a mainstream postdoc is not something that I'm really interested in. At time, it also has to align with your other commitments. And that can be anything. Like for me, one of the major commitment that came was the family. Like I have parents who are comparatively dependent on me for various things. So that was one of the things that gave me a reality check that I cannot be anywhere wherever I want to be. Somewhere I have to negotiate between my presence, my availability at home and everything. So that also is one of the reasons why you chose certain career. And this combination that I have at present allows me to pick up a lot of additional skills that I want in myself, personally speaking, and also in terms of what long-term goals I have set for myself. This is giving me a lot of more exposure. So that was various reasons I was okay, choosing this set of careers that I have chosen for myself. How have you got to know about the job vacancy? Well, I will say I have been lucky in this department always. I had some amazing connections and networks which talked to me about this vacancy. And it actually didn't come as a direct vacancy. If I talk about the college one, I got like one of my friend's friend told him about this vacancy for a part-time biostatistics teacher faculty here at St. Joseph. And I got this opportunity. I gave a demo, they liked it. And so I started as a part-timer, and then they basically allowed me, they suggested that there is a vacancy because they liked my work. They suggested that there is a vacancy for a full-time. Would you like to, apply for that? And it was working for me. The environment was working for me. The amount of learning I was getting was very lucrative. So yes, I applied, and there were other candidates. Yeah, I had upper hand of the fact that they knew me. And that added in my favor again. And I landed up with the position. So I did not search for it deliberately. Like I did not go after various places to search for a job, but rather it just happened to come to me while I was setting up my institute. And that's about it. And well, institute wasn't a job vacancy to know about. I liked the venue and I knew I had to set it up, so I did. How do you organize your current work schedule? Well, you learn how to prioritize. You first have to have a priority list, checklist that really helps you. Better use digital calendars and alarms to block your time so that you don't double book yourself. And you also get to know that how much free windows you are getting for recuperating, because that is also very important. If you allot all the time and there is no time left for yourself, you will exhaust it will take very little time for you to be exhausted and burn out. So you won't get to be productive in that. You set realistic goals. Don't set goals which are overarching or overachieving and requires too long of a unrealistic time frame. Okay, many times we set it. There's no problem in having long-term goals, but break your long-term goals into small chunks which are achievable. Okay, perfection is a myth. How many times we fall prey to this idea that it has to become perfect? It will never. Trust me on that. It will never. It may be perfect to you and then it won't be perfect to somebody else, and anybody with more experience will bring new perspective, and that will bring down your perfection. So you cannot keep running after the perfection and thus finishing only one task in your entire day because you wanted to make it perfect. You finish it, you finish other tasks, come back to it if you're not satisfied with the product. But just don't keep doing one single thing throughout the day and then say, I don't have time to do other things. You won't have time to do other things if you're investing too much of your time in just one single task in hand. Learn to say no. It's a hard learning. It's a very hard learning, but somewhere you have to learn it, how to say no for the things, because otherwise you end up putting too many things on your plate by saying yes to everything, and you won't be able to finish any of that. And then you will lose your face, then you will lose your contacts because people can't trust you anymore because you said yes and then you're not going to do it. So that also doesn't help. So that's why it's better to say no, or at least put a time which fits your time schedule instead of saying yes and without negotiating the time bound of the things. And most importantly, you will be able to organize yourself better if you're kind to yourself. If you're not kind to yourself, you will always give others the priority and you will not give priority yourself, and then you will end up burning out. You won't be able to enjoy what you're doing, and then you won't be productive either. Okay. How did you decide this career option is best fit for you? As Nikita also said, it's something that comes to you gradually. It's not something that day one you knew you will do that. Yes, it works that way for some people. They are very clear and determined and nothing on the path changes their decision. But largely, I believe you learn, means you're evolving with your each growing day, right? So somewhere what you set as a goal initially might change, not entirely, but in some extents. So be open to experiences. You allow the setbacks and failures. They are very much important. Okay. Be ready to start afresh after the setback or the failure. Hit and trials are part of your life. Allow them to happen as many times as they happen. Okay. And stop looking for one single recipe for success or one definition of success. Yes, for somebody, it might be, they will consider it a success once they are in a tenured position in some, first tier universities or something. You, on the other hand, your success might be to make a product out of your PhD. Or your success might be that once you have went to those field where you were doing your field work, you connected with people and now you want to do something good for the community, it no longer resonate with the idea of being a tenure position somewhere. So your success is what you want to achieve, how much of it you manage to achieve. It has nothing to do that just because you have chosen one path, it has to land up in one career. Otherwise, you are not successful. So that thought process has to change. Somewhere you have to accept your success definition. You have to define it first of all, set benchmarks for yourself, achieve that. And if you have managed to do that, you are successful. Doesn't matter what others are doing or what others have to say about it. It is your success. It is your life. So you have to define it for yourself. I think that's pretty much it from my side. I'm also open to the questions if you have any for me.
Thank you, Nitin. That was more than a career talk. So thanks for that. People can absolutely shoot questions or type it in the chat box and I can relay it across as well. So we have Nitin, we have, I hope there's Ravi was around. Yeah, Ravi is there as well as Nikita as well as there, and Mehreen is also there. So Anurag is not here currently, but all the other 4 speakers are here. And generally, it doesn't have to be related to their career choices. You can ask other questions as well. Just wanted to check. Senji, can you see any questions in the chat box? Or if...
No, there are
no, nothing, right? Right. Okay, just wanted to check. Cool. So if you guys have questions later on, you can email the speakers. They've been kind enough to give their email IDs. You can get in touch with them related to their careers and everything. So thank you. I hope you guys had a wonderful session today with animal behavior and communication skills, as well as other career options which you can pick up after your research PhD stint. So thank you all. Nitin has given his email ID as well. Yeah.
Are everybody too exhausted or just shy to ask the questions?
Well, I don't know. Maybe they've not thought of questions. Yeah.
Okay, why are we doing this workshop, by the way?
You're asking me or are we asking the
No, I am asking others because they are attending. So I'm curious to know why they have chosen to attend this.
Anybody? So Nitin is asking questions if anybody wants to answer.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, Madhuri.
Hello, sir. It's not like we don't want to ask question or nothing like that, but I am so like new to this, and I am thinking, oh my God, all these things we have to go through as we are starting as a new students. It seems overwhelming kind of situations to think, okay, all that, and it takes a while to process and what you guys are going through. So it was a very insightful session.
Great. Definitely. So, and I agree, it is overwhelming and it's a lot of things to absorb in. But what helps in this process is, as we said, time is in our hand. You have all the liberty of the time. You can take it at your own pace. There's nothing, as I said, there's no way that you have to do each and everything what each of us have said, right? You can do what fits best for you. You can do it in the time frame that what best fits for you. Some of the things you would like to do or you will be demanded to do early, whereas other things comes much later. So it's completely fine to take it. And as I said, it's okay to say no to certain experiences as well. You have to be vocal about it at each step. Sometimes you might not want to go to field work. You don't want to do the field work in certain areas. Just be clear and vocal about it instead of saying yes and then not doing it later on. So those are fine. Means take it step by step. Means whatever step comes first to you. And the idea of the workshop was to give you a broader exposure, but at the same time, also to figure out where your own interest or your own capabilities match, right? So take it in that sense. I think it is fine. And there's no rush to anything at the moment. You have the liberty to make choices at this very point.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Like as an outsider, like we are not yet into the field, so
Yeah.
we have a different mindset than you people who
True.
have seen and you have experienced so many things.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen in your perspective, so it was like, okay, we have to make up our mind such that we have to survive everything. Thank you so much. It was very helpful.
Same
Hey,
here.
Madhushri, I'll just add to a few points. Don't get overwhelmed. In which year are you right now? Are you doing PhD? Can you tell us about yourself, please?
Yes, ma'am. I want to do PhD. So I have different kinds of things in my mind. Yeah, I am in now getting an idea about what exactly are going
Right.
in the field. Yes, I like it is not like overwhelming. It is. I'm just now getting introduced into all these things, so it was very fascinating also at the same time.
What are you currently doing?
Yes, ma'am. I have completed my MSc in botany subject in Manasa Gangotri University of Mysore. Now I'm like I have to join for PhD. I'm thinking of joining PhD as I have cleared GATE, and now I am acquiring knowledge as many places as I can, such that I can get good opportunities to pursue my career in research.
Great, great. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm just putting one chat in the chat window for everyone. There's something called Cheeky Scientist. Do follow it on LinkedIn and make a very good LinkedIn profile. That will help everyone. Please do this.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
LinkedIn profile. Yeah.
Yeah. Madhushri, one thing that will also help is, and I am so happy to hear that you are already ahead of your time and you have already started, exploring what all options you have for your PhD. Congratulations on clearing your GATE. And one thing that might help is interact with students directly. So as you visit the websites of different professors who might align with the work that you are interested in, most of those professors' website will also have the list of the students or contacts of the students. So you can directly write to them, ask them about their experience, the work that they have done. To my understanding, most of the students are open to interacting with the candidates who are interested in their work and everything. So you can definitely do that, and it will allow you to also build up contacts early and gain a better perspective from person who is experiencing that very same thing that you want to get indulged into in future. So that will also help. Like I remember one of my friends who was a PhD student with me in my batchmate. She came to the field from a very different perspective. She just happened to have written to one of the then PhD students, and it was a positive response from her side, and that just spurred the whole spark. And then she joined as a PhD, did a tremendous PhD here at IISc. and now she's doing a postdoc. And so her entry in the field was partly because of a very positive response from somebody in the lab, right? So those kind of interactions are, life altering. So I would say, give yourself a chance, write to as many people. Out of 1,000, even if 10 replies, those 10 will work for you. Same goes with the professors that you are interested in. Write to as many as possible within India, abroad as well, wherever you are interested, whoever you are finding interest. Writing to them will allow you to communicate. If they respond, even if they respond in a no, that also works, because it actually tells you that you tried, you got a response, your writing was lucrative enough for them to respond to you. So it's a win-win situation, I guess. So go for that as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. I think.
Okay. So if there are no questions, thank you all. See you tomorrow then. And,
thank you, everyone.
Thank
you. Bye.
yeah.